The Shield has always represented the most dominant force in professional wrestling storytelling, and right now, in 2026, the narrative landscape is begging for their return, but not as the heroes who once stood for justice and truth. What if the Shield doesn't reunite to fight Roman Reigns? What if they join him? What if the Bloodline becomes the first family, and the most unstoppable unit in wrestling history gets even stronger? That's what we're exploring today on WWE Express, so if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and ring the notification bell right now because we're diving deep into one of the most compelling storylines wrestling could give us. The beauty of Roman Reigns' evolution over the last few years has been watching a single-minded warrior gradually understand the value of having a true family around him. His storylines with Paul Heyman, his connections with Obafemi and Jacob Fatu, and the way he's positioned himself as the absolute pillar of the wrestling world all paint a picture of a man who doesn't just want to be the head of the table. He wants to be the head of a dynasty. And when you think about the Shield's core philosophy, it was always about family. Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns once stood as three men bound by brotherhood, willing to destroy anyone who stood against them. What makes this concept so fascinating is the narrative potential of seeing that bond renewed, not against Roman, but alongside him. Think about the psychological warfare that could unfold here. Roman Reigns doesn't need the Shield to validate his dominance. He's already the most accomplished athlete in the entire industry. But the Shield joining the Bloodline would fundamentally shift the power dynamic of professional wrestling itself. It would tell a story about three men who once fought against a system deciding that instead of breaking the system, they'd control it. Instead of fighting authority, they'd become the ultimate authority. That's character development at its finest. Consider Seth Rollins' narrative arc. He spent years seeking vindication, seeking to prove that he's the visionary of his generation. What if his vindication comes in the form of acknowledging that Roman Reigns was right all along? What if the story becomes about Seth finally recognizing that his genius is magnified 1,000 times over when he stands beside the tribal chief? That's not a step backward for Seth's character. That's the ultimate validation. He'd be standing as the strategist, the architect, the mind behind the first family. His rivalry with Roman wouldn't end. It would transform into something far more intricate and compelling. And Dean Ambrose, now known as Jon Moxley, returning to rejoin his brothers? That's a story that writes itself. The Wanderer returns home. The man who walked away from everything comes back because he finally understands what his brothers have built. There's a vulnerability in that narrative that wrestling fans crave. It's about redemption. It's about recognizing that maybe the greatest thing you ever were part of is worth returning to, even if it means bending the knee to someone you once stood against as equals. The tactical advantages of the Shield joining the Bloodline would reshape the entire landscape of professional wrestling. We're talking about three of the most technically sound athletes ever to step foot in a ring, combined with the dominant force that Roman Reigns has become. Numbers advantages mean everything in professional wrestling storytelling. It would create a scenario where any team standing against them would need to form their own supergroup just to have a fighting chance. That's the kind of storytelling that dominoes into multiple feuds, multiple championships, multiple months of compelling television. Imagine the promos. Imagine Roman Reigns standing in the center of the ring with the Shield's theme playing, with Seth Rollins and Jon Moxley standing behind him as the band strikes them together. Imagine the way Paul Heyman would position this on the microphone, talking about the evolution of the Bloodline from a family united by blood to a family united by principle. These are the moments that become legendary in wrestling history. These are the moments that get replayed for decades. The storytelling possibilities extend far beyond just the immediate shock value. What happens when internal tension develops? What happens when Roman's dominance begins to overshadow Seth's ambitions once again? The Shield was never a perfectly cohesive unit. There was always that undercurrent of tension, that sense that any one of them could turn on the others at any moment. That complexity embedded in the first family would create endless dramatic potential. Would Seth eventually lead a rebellion? Would Jon Moxley's loyalty be questioned? Wrestling thrives on these kinds of questions. From a character perspective, this angle also allows Roman Reigns to ascend even further. He doesn't become a stronger wrestler through this alliance. He becomes something greater. He becomes a leader. He becomes someone capable of uniting the very men he once stood as equals with. That's a different kind of power. That's the power of influence, of presence, of being so undeniably dominant that even those who once challenged you are willing to fall in line. It's the ultimate vindication of everything Roman has worked toward. The championship implications are equally fascinating. With the Shield backing Roman, the World Heavyweight Championship becomes functionally untouchable. But that's not where the story ends. That's where it gets truly interesting. Because now Seth Rollins and Jon Moxley need to prove themselves as individuals within this power structure. They need to chase championships of their own. They need to grow within the first family while also maintaining their individual identities. That's the tension that makes great storytelling. What makes this concept resonate with wrestling fans is that it's not about underdogs anymore. It's about recognizing where true power lies and making a choice to align with it. It's about three men who once represented rebellion deciding that the ultimate form of that rebellion is controlling the very system they once fought against. That character evolution is earned. That's wrestling storytelling at its finest. The Shield return and joining Roman Reigns' bloodline to form the first family in 2026 isn't just a speculative angle. It's a narrative waiting to happen. It's the kind of story that respects wrestling as a dramatic medium while delivering the action, the drama, and the character development that makes professional wrestling the most compelling form of entertainment in the world. This is the kind of storytelling that separates WWE Express from every other wrestling channel out there. We don't just react to wrestling, we imagine what wrestling could be. And frankly, the wrestling could be absolutely incredible. If you love this breakdown and you want more original analysis of wrestling's greatest storylines, please make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because WWE Express is where you find the most thoughtful wrestling commentary on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.